What's up guys, Damian Keyes here. I believe we are in a golden time for being a musician, a band and an artist. And the reason for that is because for the first time ever, we have direct communication with our audience. We can build and look after and monetize an audience like has never been seen before. But I also believe that this golden era of DIY bands and DIY music is coming to an end. If you look at the last 3 to 5 years, it's becoming harder and harder to build and look after that audience. Not only because everyone is now doing it, but because a lot of the social media platforms are taking away that organic reach. And yes, there are still some out there, and yes, there are ways of building that audience, but it is becoming harder. And if you look down the line where this organic reach starts to lower in order to get preferred paid reach, it makes it tougher for you to communicate with your audience. And if that happens, or if that keeps happening and it keeps shutting the door, it makes DIY artistry much, much harder. And who wins at that point? Of course, the major labels. Major labels started in the first place saying, hey, we can make the record, we can manufacture the record, and we can distribute the record, but it's going to cost a lot of money, but we'll fund it and therefore we'll take a lot of the profits. Nowadays, it's less about making CDs and it's less about making the music and it's more about building the audience. But right now, it's costing more to build the audience than it was a year, 2 years, or 5 years ago. I mean, think about it. Not only are you the artist and the songwriter and the musician and the performer, but now you're also the tour manager, the plugger, the PR person. You're in charge of the content creation. You've got to be the customer service on all of your content that you're distributing, and the list goes on and on. Needless to say, you've also got to fund all of this time and money. Where do you start? How do you do this? How do you build up enough momentum with so many different jobs and so many different hats on? It is my belief that in 2020, we need a new strategy. Why 2020? Well, kind of now, but I feel like 2020 makes it sound better for the video. And that new strategy is we need help. There's too many things to do to juggle your artistry and building the audience and the marketing, and we need help. And that help is going to come in the form of a manager. But Damian, I hear you ask, we'd love to have a manager, but it's just not that simple. There are millions and millions and millions of bands and artists, and there aren't many music managers. True. So today we are going to tackle this problem. Now, a few times over the years, I have worked with bands closer than just advice or training. It's got to be a more formal agreement, and I would class myself at that point as a manager of a band. The problem with it is, as you're working together and building something, for me, then you'd start getting calls from major labels and sync companies, and I felt majorly out of my depth when it came to the lives and careers of these original artists. And at that point, I feel like I've done my bit, that momentum bit I'm very good at, and at that point it's time to find a new home, a new manager, someone who can take them to that next level with their management. So I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days and doing some research. I took to YouTube and started searching for how to find managers, what advice managers have for bands, and everything I found was really high-end level. They were talking about international deals, and they were talking about sync companies, and they were talking about areas where they'd missed a huge chunk out, which is once you've started your band, how are you going to get to the point where everyone is interested and you've built that audience and the music industry is going to come sniffing around? I've talked about this on videos in the past. Getting from A to B means the hardest part is getting from A to A and a half, because at that point you get enough momentum and everyone starts sniffing around that getting from here to B is a slingshot and much, much easier. The first half of that journey is very, very difficult. Getting people to pay attention to who you are, your music, and what you're doing. This is a tough, tough place to be. And if you look at bands like the Foo Fighters, yes, they need a manager, but it's a very, very different problem that they are facing. And for you guys, you have to figure out all of this stuff about the music industry and marketing and your product at the same time without any money and without much experience. This is the toughest part for you. So let's start with what a manager is, and more importantly, what a manager isn't. Now, the Oxford English Dictionary defines the term manager as a person who controls the business and professional activities of a performer or a group of musicians. Now, the manager is the closest thing to being in the band for someone who isn't actually in the band, and they will spend the most amount of time with the band. But getting a manager depends on so many variables because every artist is different, every band is different, every genre is different, every city, every country, your skill set, the manager's skill set, all means you won't get a one-size-fits-all manager. Think of it like this, a manager is not a live agent, but a manager might get involved in helping you book a tour. A manager is not a plugger, but a manager might have experience in radio or some contacts in radio and be able to help you get your music on radio. A manager is not a record label, but a manager might be able to either source or bring to the party some money to help you spend on making a record or marketing and distributing your music. Same thing about being a producer. A manager is not a producer, but a manager might have a lot of experience in production and might be able to help you produce your music. A manager is also not a social media person, but like myself, might have experience in marketing and social media, which can take your game to the next level. A manager is not a personal assistant, however, they might be able to take a certain amount of work away from you so that you can concentrate on the most important things. So why do you need a manager all of a sudden? You need someone who can help you pull all of this stuff together. Someone who can help you set targets and, more importantly, achieve those targets. And a manager is not going to wave a magic wand and you can dump all of your responsibilities on them and say, just make this awesome and build my audience for me so that I can just play music. But they will be able to help you with strategy and organization and accountability, which is so important. A manager will also act as a mentor for the music industry and someone you can bounce off, which helps build confidence. So how do you find a manager? And I'm not talking about technically, because doing a search on LinkedIn for managers in your area will bring up quite a few of them. But how do you get them interested in you and your music and want to be a part of this journey? The first thing is self-awareness. It's so crucial to realize that if you're starting out or starting to conquer your city, then Scooter Braun is probably not going to be knocking down the door. He might, but let's not gamble on it. But I tell you who is out there is there are a lot of young, hungry, up-and-coming people who want to be in the music industry. They want to be part of this business and management would fit them really well. There's a lot of graduates and students doing music industry courses right now that could bring a lot to the party. These people are young, enthusiastic, and hungry. And more importantly, for once in your life, you have the leverage because they need to build experience. And what better way to do that than working with you on an actual band around the city, building something great. Now, when you have someone in mind, this doesn't have to be a contractual arrangement. This can just be a trial. Hey, let's work together for a month, see if it works for you, see if it works for us, see if we can achieve something and see if we want to take this further forward. It's really important to find the right skill set for you. Now, when I found myself managing bands, I know what I bring to the party and I certainly know what I don't bring to the party. But when I have managed bands, it's always been about pulling everything together, making sure it's a finely tuned machine, it's organized, making sure that the social media or whatever ways of distributing the music is working so people are finding out about the band, whipping up a storm, getting some momentum so that the gigs are getting more packed and the tours are building in size. Okay, so back to the title of this video. Why do I think it is so important for you to have a manager in 2020? Well, if my business completely fell apart tomorrow and I had to start again, my strategy would be very simple. I would do whatever it took to make enough money to hire one person. And that person would be my manager, my assistant. Now, let me get this clear about the difference between an artist and a manager. As an artist or an entrepreneur, your job is how this is going to drive forward. Your job is the art. Your job is the big picture. Your job is how you are making something that other people will want to stand up and say, I believe in you. I want to come on your journey as well. That is not the manager's job. But the manager's job is to manage the systems and everything around it to allow you to do the most important things. For every business I've started, the first thing I want to bring on board is a manager who can help me manage my time, hold me accountable, someone I can bounce off, and more importantly, someone who can manage systems and help me get to the next stage in where I'm trying to get to. I want to make this really, really clear. I would be the leader. I would have control. I would be driving this forward and I would have the final say. But I would have my deputy. I would have a manager who is there with me so I can say, this is what I want to achieve. Now help me achieve this. The good news is you have complete control in this music industry. The gatekeepers have gone, but for how long? And I think the door is starting to close. It's becoming more difficult because of the amount of things that you need to do as an artist, from songwriting faster than ever, content faster than ever, gigs more than ever. You need to be on show at all times, doing, and looking after the audience. It's becoming increasingly harder and you need help pulling all of this together. This is something that was easier just a couple of months ago, and it was even easier 1 year ago, and it was even easier 2 years ago. And looking forward, there is nothing to lead me to believe that this is going to get easier. I believe this is going to get harder. Consumption, which means society, is what society wants. Consumption is faster. Everybody wants things faster, now, on to the next thing. So therefore, looking forward, you need to start building your team. And if that means you have to use leverage, which might be money, it might be time, or it might be inexperienced people that you have to train up, now is the time to do that. Now is the time for you to build a team, and your job is to find a manager, but not some very experienced manager who's just going to come in, click their fingers and make you top of the charts. Now is the time for you to make a manager, to find someone who's young, enthusiastic, hungry, with a good brain on their shoulders, and someone with a big work ethic, and say, we are going to work on this together, using your leverage, which might be money, but it probably won't be, but it probably will be your time, and finding someone who isn't that experienced and training them into a music managing ninja. So what about yourself? Have you ever thought about being an artist or band manager? Because if you have, you should definitely leave a comment down below, because I think there's going to be some very enthusiastic bands and artists looking for you. But if not, tell me the struggles you are facing, because I'm well aware of how hard it is to juggle all this stuff with nobody around. So tell me some struggles so I can try and help you strategize through it. Leave that in the comments below. But if you can do me a favor, if you can like, subscribe, more importantly, just come and be a part of this community, because I'm so proud of what we're building. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.